afternoon to you. This is The Social Hit on talkSPORT 2 with me, Olly Clink. I've got the former Newcastle midfielder and almost scorer of one of their greatest ever goals.
I forgot to find it.
Darren Ambrose. Yeah, can't find it, can you? That goal, apparently. Apparently better than Shearer's against Chelsea. Come on. Come on, you're joking, aren't you?
Great save.
We're going to be talking about Newcastle in just a moment. Kieran Trippier looking like he might be moving away from the club. Is that the right call from both the club and him? We'll also get a transfer roundup from Alex Crook a bit later on as well. And Twitter Corner is a belter this week. Ivan Toney, is he the second best striker in the league? Come on. Come on. No, he's not.
You know what? You could have said that statement to me as if like a quiz, like who said that? And I think the majority of people would have said that's Rory Jennings that said that.
Thank you, Rory.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Rory Jennings, friend of the show, of course, who came out with that statement, and we'll get stuck into that a bit later on. Firstly, though, Darren, your former club, the club I support, Newcastle United, preparing for their new season. Let's start with something that's doing the rounds a bit at the moment. There's a few rumours about Kieran Trippier potentially leaving the club, potentially going away to Saudi Arabia. What do you make of that as a call? Because I feel like Trippier definitely didn't have his best Euros, but it was a bit strange because he was out of position and kind of filling in the entire time. He didn't have his best season in the lead up to that as well. Now, there were injuries in between that, and he was out for a fair stretch of time. He also got 10 assists last season. It wasn't the worst campaign he's ever had, but there were a few games I thought where defensively he was quite suspect. Newcastle also do have a few players waiting in the wings, such as Tino Livramento. So where are you looking at this at the moment in terms of him potentially moving away from the club?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it briefly earlier. I think for everyone, I think this is the right thing if he does move on, which sounds particularly harsh. Like before when we was off air, you spoke about the assists, and he got 10 assists, and that surprised me because a lot of
same as De Bruyne.
A lot of the memories from last season were when things were going wrong for Kieran Trippier, and unlike him as well. A lot of the mistakes were being made were unlike Kieran Trippier. A few bad touches, and it allowed the players to get in and score. So I just feel like, and you mentioned one of the players, Livramento and Lewis Hall as well, that are potentially, well, they're the future of the fullback roles for Newcastle. And I think, do you want to keep a character around in Kieran Trippier, which again sounds harsh because he's a fantastic football player. He's shown again at the Euros, playing out of position, what he can do. 10 assists, as you mentioned, last season. Can still clearly, he's capable of doing it in the Premier League.
Yeah.
But I think there comes a point where do you want to be the player that's going to be a bit part player and be the character to help the young players along? Or at 33, I believe he is, do you want to go and perhaps maybe cash in one of your last big deals of your career?
Where he is in his career right now, and given what he has actually achieved with Newcastle so far, how do you think he'll be looking at it? Do you think he'll be looking at this thinking, well, actually I might struggle to get in ahead of Livramento? This is the thing, because I think the issue for Trippier as well is not just because his own form has dropped a bit. It's that Livramento has been so good when he's come in. I mean, not just as a right back as well, as a left back. He has looked, already. I think this is fast track quicker than maybe even Eddie Howe was expecting, given the talent of Livramento as well. So, do you think Trippier now is looking at this and thinking, I might struggle to get in ahead of him next season? Like you said, do you really want to be that bit part player?
You know what? If I look at it from myself, my own point of view, there was moments in your career, particularly the back end, when you wake up and you think, I'm stiff today, or I've not even done anything, or you look at the young players coming through and you think, they are definitely coming to take my place, and it's hard to keep motivated. But if you look at Kieran Trippier, it's a little bit different. I don't think he's there yet in terms of his own mentality. I think he's just come off the back of the Euros where he's played almost every minute of it. And I think he'll be thinking, no, I'm still there. I'm still going to be the first choice. But there comes a moment as well when you think, if it is, as we're led to believe, a Saudi Arabian club that's coming in, we know what the finances are like there. We know what the money's like there. And do you want generational wealth? He's not going to be short of a few quid, is he, Kieran Trippier? But do you want this generational wealth at 33 coming?
Well, it sets you up, doesn't it?
It sets you up for sets generations up for life, and maybe that might enter the equation, might enter his head. But I still believe he will be looking at it, thinking, what? Like Lewis Hall and Livramento, they still need to get rid of me as opposed to I need to back them up.
I would agree with you, and I think as well the reason I would agree with you is because firstly he was the first big signing Newcastle brought in as well, and there is that to be honest, as a fan, there's a bit of sentimentality attached to that, I think, for me, but also having said that, He has been struggling, as we've said. Livramento, I think offers not just the same in terms of going forward as Trippier, or similar, and has the room to grow and actually needs those games to grow. But his defensive work has been better than Trippier's, I have to say. But I think the point you made earlier, I think what Newcastle would miss is that character that he does bring. I think because, as I said, he was that first player that initially came in. He rose the standard of a lot of those players in that squad. I think he's an extremely important voice in that dressing room. A lot of the players talk about having huddles with Trippier and him standing in the middle and saying, listen, pressure is a privilege, and that being, the thing that drove them forward and ultimately helped them to get into the top four as well. So I would agree with you that, some people I think are now looking at Trippier and simply saying, look, this guy is past his best now, and there's someone waiting in the wings to move him on. I don't quite I agree with you that I don't quite think Trippier is at that level, but ultimately I feel like this will now come down to him, because as much as he might continue being the player that starts for Newcastle, will that game time diminish a bit? I think it probably will next season.
I think on the flip side to it, if you're Kieran Trippier and you're looking and you're still thinking they need to oust me, Lewis Hall and Livramento, I'm the main player, I'm the first sign, and I'm the big player at the back, I'm the leader, I'm the captain. You're looking at it thinking, well, I think he's got a year left, am I right in saying?
Yeah, next summer.
So you can stay for a year. Saudi Arabia will still be there in a year's time. So of course, it's down to him and how he feels, whether he's at pre-season. I'm not sure he'll have returned yet, but when he goes back, has the chats to Eddie Howe, and there's arguments that Eddie Howe may not even be there. We don't know yet. So he needs to decide his future. But I still think he could stay there for a year, and Saudi Arabia will be there at the end of his contract. But does he want that? Does he want to allow Newcastle, who's been so good to him, to earn a little bit of money off him? He needs to decide that himself.
Yeah. You talked about Eddie Howe there, and you said might not even be there himself. I'm going to assume what you mean by that is that he might be tempted by the England job. Yeah. Now, obviously, I mean, when you look at the front runners, he is right up there. He's one of the favourites to take it. He's come out and said, now listen, I'm unwavering in my commitment to Newcastle. He does seem very focused on Newcastle. There was a bit of a comment where he said, if I continue to get the right backing, which I thought was interesting. I don't think it's a sign of anything, that fans should worry about if they want Eddie Howe to remain in the job, which I assume most fans do. But I think it was interesting that he almost used that as a bit of leverage to kind of say, look, hold on, I'm in charge here, and I need the right backing to be able to perform in the way that I do as Newcastle manager. But Darren, if you had the England job on the table and you were Eddie Howe right now, what would you do in this situation?
It's difficult, isn't it? And I hope for you, being a Newcastle supporter, I hope for the Newcastle supporters that Eddie Howe does stay. But as an English supporter of the country, I'd love Eddie Howe to be manager of England. I think he's the perfect man to lead us forward. I think in terms of what Gareth Southgate, what his negatives were, he will utilise his positives, as opposed he will drop players if they need to be. He'll pick players on form if you look at his past, Eddie Howe. So I hope he does. But again, the argument is England will still be there in a few years. But
so in that respect then, do you think he should do that? If you were him, do you, because I know you said you want him to be, but do you think Eddie Howe right now in his career, what is he, 46, 47? Doing a very good job at Newcastle at the moment, unfinished business I would say as well. He'll want to prove to people, I think, who have said, because he's always been viewed as that stepping stone, hasn't he? Oh, when will they move on from Eddie Howe? And I think there's a bit in Howe who wants to prove to people that no, he's not just this stepping stone manager, and that he can achieve things as well. But there is also the opportunity to take on the England job with generational talents, arguably in that squad. Let's be honest, we're talking about Jude Bellingham, who didn't have his best year, as I know, but is tearing it up at Real Madrid. There is that opportunity on the table, and I know you said the England job will always be there, but it won't always be there with this specific squad right now.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I was going to say exactly the same thing, and I think there's two sides to the argument. Do you want... Gareth Southgate took over after the debacle, and England were in a bad way, and kind of the only way was up, and he became a successful international manager that way. Where do you want to be the man to follow that? And there you can fall a lot differently to how Gareth Southgate took over, or do you want to be the man to lead us forward and take this, as you said, generational wealth through to and try and win us that trophy? Because players are only going to improve. We've seen that throughout the years, but are you going to get a better opportunity and a better squad of players to come into it? Yes, there'll be opportunities to take over England in the future for sure if you're Eddie Howe, but we've heard him say it before a while ago. The pinnacle of an English manager's career is to manage your country. There'll be clubs available if he managed England. Even if he didn't do well, there'll be clubs to come back to when he's 50 odd. I think.
Well, we saw that with Roy Hodgson, didn't we?
I think if he has the opportunity, I think he should take it.
Take it right now. Really. So it's interesting because Harry Redknapp was talking the other day on talkSPORT as well about. Do you remember that time, of course, where he was the favourite and he was doing a brilliant job at Tottenham? In fact, I think they thrashed Newcastle 5-0, and then very soon after he resigned. And then everyone kind of thought, oh, well, here we go. He's going to get this job. And then Roy Hodgson actually eventually got the job. And Redknapp was saying that actually in that moment, he basically feels that Eddie Howe, as you've just said, should take that opportunity. And I tell you what, it's a really tough one as a Newcastle fan and an England fan because it's very bittersweet. But obviously, I would rather see him do well for Newcastle as much as I'm a huge England fan. But it would be fairly bittersweet if he was eventually to leave because, I agree with you that he is an exceptional fit for that job at the moment. Please stay, Eddie. Please stay with us. Just in terms of Newcastle next season, how do you see them getting on? They're not in any European competition. They've managed to hold on, it seems, so far to their big stars. In fact, Joel Linton's come out and said that he's very sure that Bruno Guimaraes will be staying at the club, which I think is a massive thing for them. Isak, it seems at the moment, is going to be staying. So bearing in mind they're going to be keeping them, we're going to see Tonali eventually come back into the fray as well. How are Newcastle going to get on next season? Again,
for me, it's down to what happens managerial-wise. If Eddie Howe leaves, I think they might struggle, might be a very similar type of season than last season. Because I respect and I rate Eddie Howe that much, I think.
What if, I'll give you a massive hypothetical situation. I don't think this is going to happen, just to the record, but what if, let's say, Eddie Howe goes to England and they get Pochettino, who, by the way, has worked under Mitchell, the new sporting director.
I think it will be very similar to last season. I do. I think just the change again and getting used to a manager. He's getting used to his players. He'll want to add some more players. It's very difficult to come in and the aim would be to take Newcastle back to that Champions League football, and the aim for Eddie Howe is to do that as well. I think Newcastle have a better opportunity of breaking into that top four again with Eddie Howe if he stays than if he leaves and Mauricio Pochettino comes in.
I would agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I think that the thing about Newcastle next season is one of their biggest problems last season, and it's so boring as an argument, and there were other things that were going wrong, but a lot of the problem came down to the injuries and also just the amount of fixtures that squad had. It was too thin, and people can look at it and say, well, hold on, Villa were in European competition, they managed to come fourth. Firstly, very different European competition. You don't have to play your first team every week. And secondly, Aston Villa's squad had more depth to it, I think, than Newcastle's. So if Newcastle could have a similar season to the one that they had when they came fourth, where a lot of their key players do stay fit, I think they will be challenging for the top four this season. I really think they will.
It'll be tough with the teams that are coming back as well.
I know, but it's also a squad that has done it. It's a squad that has done it before. And I'm pretty sure Aston Villa got exactly the same points, if not 1 point less.
Yeah.
Last season than Newcastle did. So it's not like they had a fluke season and managed to scrape their way in. They did it very well indeed. But we'll see how it goes. They've certainly got some of the most talented players in the squad. And Eddie, just stay. Just please stay. Please stay. Or win us the World Cup. Do one of the two.
Yeah.
Do one of the two and I'll be very happy.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.